Hello and welcome to the top 40 of my top 100 games of the decade. We've counted down the first 60 of this top 100 and we still have 40 to go. Once again, just as a reminder, the choices in this video and in fact the whole series are indeed my choices, games that I have played and enjoyed immensely. If you disagree, if you feel that stuff is missing, feel free to let me know your choices and what you consider to be the games of the decade, but please be aware that chances are if something didn't make the list, there's a chance I didn't play it. So yeah, I can't comment on things I haven't played. We might as well just get started, shall we? Let's go straight on to number 40. Deadly Premonition is an awful, cheaply made game, just riddled with tech issues and dodgy animations and God knows how many issues that just, in an ordinary world, would be enough to make me write off this game as just crap, but Deadly Premonition is also one of the finest experiences I've ever played. It's got a lot of technical issues, but it's also got a lot of heart and a lot of imagination. And those two things really help bring it all together. There's very much a Lynchian Twin Peaks vibe going on with Deadly Premonition, as you are FBI agent York going to the town of Greenvale to investigate a murder, but then lots of other stuff happens and you just kind of have to roll with it, and things get weird, and York himself is weird, and everyone's weird. And the low budget nature of the game kind of adds to the vibe. So, with everything being all weird and York being a strange man who talks to himself and looks to the future in his coffee, to have this awkward animation to show him smiling just adds to that weirdness. Whereas normally you'd look at something like that and think, this is terrible, why did they get away with this? They get away with it because it's weird and it's surreal, and all of the stiltedness of the acting and the weird volume issues with the music are all just part of that weirdness, part of that surreal, dreamlike nature of the game. And as such, Deadly Premonition, as a final product, is just such a really, really great experience. A lot of weird stuff going on, some really genuinely terrifying stuff going on as well. And I absolutely love Deadly Premonition. It is one of the worst made games that I have ever played, but it is also, subsequently, one of the best experiences I have ever had in video games, and I highly recommend Deadly Premonition. It is a real tragedy that you can no longer buy Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, the game, because it is part of the generally great Scott Pilgrim franchise, alongside the comics and the film on which the game is based. It is basically just a fun, fast-paced brawler, loads of really fluid moves. It's very River City Ransom. It's sort of very clearly inspired by a lot of that. As you progress through, you get more and more abilities, you get more moves, and the game just gets even more and more fun as it goes on. There's some really cool co-op stuff built into it as well. I have played through it in co-op. That was pretty fun. It really leans into what makes the comics and the movie great. It reflects a lot of the scenes that happen in both of those. If you've never read the comics or seen the movie, then the game might be really confusing, because it doesn't really explain a lot of stuff, but if you are a fan of the other media, then it all makes sense, and there's a lot of really cool nods to that as you go along. Every level building up to a different evil X that you've got to defeat, all of them very much reflecting their unique things, and yeah, I really liked how they went about all that. The soundtrack is really good. It's by Anna Managuchi, a really great band. so it's got that going for it. It's just a really fun, enjoyable game that is part of one of my favourite franchises ever, and quite frankly, I'm in lesbians with this game. A very recent entry here with Knights and Bikes, which is the recent game from the director of Tearaway, who had also worked at Little Big Planet. Kickstarted a game about two girls in Cornwall in the 1980s just going on an adventure, and it perfectly captures the joy of being a child. The main characters are all about just imagination and adventure and discovering things even in the most mundane places. And it's really charming little game. It's a very simple game. The gameplay is very simple, built heavily around co-op because you've got the two girls and their different skills, although it is single player as well. It's got a really great sense of humour. There is a goose named Captain Honkers, which of course is always great to have a character like that, but it isn't just all like, oh, happy children, fun times or anything like that. No, because there is like an element of the grim reality of 1980s Cornwall, this sort of rundown seaside town. No one's really visiting it anymore, everyone's kind of struggling economically. You've got stuff with the main character Demelza not really kind of understanding the passing of her mother and all that sort of stuff. So it's got all that to it that kind of elevates what's there. Because at its heart it's that children's story, but it's got all that stuff around the edge of it that there's a bit more to it, a bit more bite to it, and it's a really good, nice little experience. Even though it's fairly recent, I think it's deserving of this list. So there hasn't really been a lot of competition for this title, but this is the best Metroid game of the 2010s. I know that the only other games are Metroid Other M, which not a lot of people liked, and Federation Force, which oh boy, that game. So yeah, Samus Returns though is at least a really good traditional Metroid game. It is ostensibly a remake of Metroid 2 on the Game Boy, rather appropriately released for the 3DS, so it was also a handheld game. It's just a really good, solid Metroid game. Not the best one, that's still Super Metroid, but it's got all the elements that you want. It's got the exploration, it's got the really cool abilities, but they've added in the things like the melee counter is a really nice little touch. I really like the addition of that. It makes combat a little bit more fun, I think, and I really like some of the little touches that they added to the gameplay to make that work. It is fiercely addictive as a result. That when I played it, I was just going to kind of play through it casually, you know, get to the end, whatever. While I played it, I ended up just going, okay, I'm going for 100%, thank you very much. It provides you the tools to do that quite easily, but there's still like an element of exploration and figuring things out, but it's really good at pointing you in the right direction. And yeah, I just ended up going straight for the 100% and just having a blast while doing it. So it's clearly doing something right if that was the case. So Metroid, Samus Returns, excellent Metroid game, and the best of the decade. Splatoon is the one online shooter that has managed to get its hooks into me. I am not really much of a multiplayer player. I don't tend to sort of jump onto online games all that much, but Splatoon I really latched onto. It's hard to sort of really explain why. I think just I really liked the aesthetic first and foremost. It's got this really fun cartoony aesthetic that's just backed with stupid fish puns, a really great soundtrack, and like a kind of almost Jet Set Radio-esque vibe. And I like the basic ability to switch between being a kid and being a squid is a really fun mechanic as well, because it kind of forces you to sort of move quickly but have no defences, or move slowly and be able to shoot. And That's pretty cool. I also really just like the idea of having to paint territory instead of aiming for kills. I just think it's a really nice little twist on it, even if I'm not always particularly good at it. The game, though, is just really, really fun all the time. And unlike a lot of online shooters where I feel like if you play them more, you end up with more advantages and it's harder to kind of get into if you're not devoted to the game. Splatoon never feels like that. It always feels like, because of the fact that you have to swap out gear in order to have the abilities associated with it, there's always like a toss-up. You can never just stack things forever. So I feel it ends up being a lot fairer and ends up being a lot more fun as a result. So Splatoon, excellent online shooter that probably is never going to be taken very seriously, but it is absolutely amazing. I love it. It's still really weird to me to think that Xenoblade Chronicles was released for the Wii, because this game is a huge sprawling JRPG with just these massive areas to run around in and explore, and I'm just like, how the hell did the Wii of all systems handle this game? I mean, it's not exactly super pretty, so I can kind of see where it managed to, but it's still an impressive achievement for a console like the Wii to run this game. It's a really, really cool RPG. I actually really liked its massive, sprawling nature. It's got a completely gibberish story, honestly, but one that's like a lot of fun. It's really interesting, it's really intriguing, it's really fascinating, and it's backed with this cast of characters that are actually quite a lot of fun to spend 100 plus hours with, and you will spend 100 plus hours with, because those side quests just get ridiculously addictive. But yeah, the characters are really cool as well, because somehow the voice acting, while it's not great, is charming in its own weird, rustic, British kind of way. And whatever they did, they managed to avoid making the repetitive combat voice lines not obnoxious for 100 hours, which is especially impressive, because it's the fact that it doesn't get annoying to hear, "Yeah baby, it's rhyme time" for the millionth time, is a testament to just how good this game is. It's really solid combat mechanics, really cool exploration with huge maps, lots of things to explore and discover, loads of stuff to do. It's just such a really cool achievement, and again, I'm really surprised that this was a Wii game, of all things. So, if Super Mario Maker was Nintendo acknowledging the great work of ROM hackers, Sonic Mania is Sega doing the same, but going one step further by just hiring a bunch of ROM hackers to make a Sonic game. And honestly, it is one of the best Sonic games in existence. And it's a real return to form for the series. It came out in 2017, but it feels just as good as the old original 90s Mega Drive games, because that's essentially what it is. It's a direct sequel to that. It really takes Sonic back to basics. It kind of does away with a lot of the gimmicks that the series has built up around itself, and just made a Mega Drive style Sonic game that is just so good. It is so much fun to play. It's got all the fun, fluid mechanics, but they've just refined them really nicely, added in a few little moves that were originally meant to be in the old games and never made it in. There's some really cool remixes of some previous stages that exist in this game, but they also go the extra mile and add in brand new levels like Studiopolis Zone and Press Garden, both of which are just phenomenally good stages. Like Studiopolis is just amazing. The soundtrack is really good as well. Like, they've really kind of latched onto how good the music was back in the old Mega Drive days. And while they've remixed some really cool stuff, the original tracks. Again, Studiopolis Zone, I have to commend. You're listening to it right now. It's what I've picked as the music for this section. But yeah, Sonic Mania, just this is what happens when you take a series that doesn't really know what it's doing back to basics and just let really talented fans take the helm and just let them do what they want. This is what you end up with, and it's amazing. Oh hey, it's another more recent game. It's one of the simplest basic concepts in the world that probably should have been a game a lot sooner, but wasn't. What if you were just a goose, a horrible goose, being horrible to everyone in the vicinity? Let's just run with that as a game concept, and it is so good. It's a chaotic mess of a game in the best possible way. You are just a goose, and you're let loose on this small English village, and you just mess with people. You just throw this groundskeeper's rake in the lake, you mess with this boy's glasses, you cause a fight between neighbours, you make an old man fall on his bum, and that is an official objective in this game, and that is pretty much the sole reason this is a 33, just that one objective. But it's just such a simple concept that works really well and just took the internet by storm as well when it came out. It's also just great that the whole thing started as a joke, and even the name, like they kind of ran with that. It was never meant to be a real game and ended up turning into a real game by accident almost, and it just got that title of just, we were going to give it a title, but never mind, this is what you're getting. And it just looks great. It's got these really amazing minimalistic visuals, and it's just, again, such a simple concept, and the fact that no one has done it before is astounding. But now that it's out there, it's absolutely an amazing game that is worthy of being called one of the greatest games of the last decade. So it might be a bit controversial, the placement of this versus Mania. If you're not happy with it, switch it around, because ultimately they're kind of both here for the same sort of reasons. Just like Sonic Mania, Sonic Generations takes Sonic back to basics. It goes back over the history of the Sonic series and picks out various levels and redoes them in two specific styles, which were the best styles of the entire series, which is first of all classic Sonic that's supposed to be similar to like the original Mega Drive games. Obviously it's a little bit different, but it's kind of modelled on that. And then the sort of boost-based colours, good side of Unleashed type gameplay, and it works really, really well. It's really short, it doesn't say it's welcome, but it's just a whole set of really cool reinterpretations of various levels from the Sonic series, from really memorable stuff like Green Hill to less memorable stuff like Crisis City from Sonic 06. But what it did do was it made Crisis City playable, which is significant because it wasn't playable originally, because Sonic 06 wasn't playable. But these two styles make it really work, and the fact that the remix of its music for classic Sonic kind of reminds me of 90s rave music is a plus too, because the remixes in this game are brilliant. There's just some really cool stuff that they did with all the music, and yeah, I absolutely love Sonic Generations. It's probably not as beloved by everyone else, but I just really latched onto it and really enjoyed it. It's a really good time, and again, proof that if you want to make a good Sonic game, just take things back to basics and remember what made it good in the first place. Oddworld New Tasty is a superb modern take on a classic game. Basically, it took Abe's Odyssey from 1987, gave it a whole lick of paint so that it's very modern. The whole thing is built in Unity, and whereas the original used a lot of pre-rendered stuff, so this is like all really real-time rendered, as opposed to like the static backdrops that originally existed in the series, but while it's done that, it also manages to keep all of the great puzzle design, and it manages to keep all of the charm that made the story and the characters really likeable in the first place. So keeping all of that is a real benefit, because they could have changed up a lot of stuff, but they didn't. It's largely just the original game, but better. That also includes as far as adding in a proper checkpointing system, because that was one of the main problems of the original game, was just how bad the checkpointing was. It's a very difficult, challenging platformer, but the amount of times we'd have to redo several screens of stuff wasn't all that fun. Whereas this time, you can do quick saves all over the place, and that's great. That's nice. Especially now you've got seamless screen transitions as well, which is nice as well. It took a really classic game and made it better, kind of allowed it to live up to its ambitions, I guess. More fluid controls, less frustrating to play because of the quick save, and just looks amazing in the process. So they did a really great job of bringing this game up to date into this decade, and I look forward to whenever Soulstorm comes out. And that is it for this section of the top 100 games of the decade. We've got so many of these to go. We have got 30 left. We're almost on the home stretch. We're getting there. We're getting there. Let me know what you thought of my choices so far, and your predictions of what you expect to be in the top 30. And I'll see you again tomorrow with the next 10. What will be in my countdown? You'll have to follow tomorrow to find out. I'll see you then. Bye.